Words about books, Ben. Yeah, we're doing a Patreon voted on book, Death on Gokuman Island by Seishi Yokomizo.
It's pretty clearly an O, but that's okay.
My goal is you never know if I'm serious or not.
That way we won't notice when you legitimately can't pronounce any of the names. Nate, it is not Ben for this episode, okay? It's Detective Bensuke.
I'm offended.
Unless you can pronounce all these names, you're not allowed to be offended.
So last year we did the first book in the, I guess it's a series. It's a series.
Yeah.
The Hunjin Murders. And you put it up for a vote, and this one won. It's the sequel that takes place like 2 decades later.
No, it takes place maybe 7 years later?
Are you sure?
Yeah.
You sure about that?
Pretty sure. It's definitely a decade tops.
Oh, yeah, Gokumon would have been, 45, probably?
Yeah, around then, yeah.
Pretty sure set in 46. All right, 9 years. So I was the closest without going under, is what I'm saying.
Okay. Yeah. So I think the Hunjin Murders takes place in 37?
37. And as you know, not a lot of things happened between 1937 and 1946 Japan. We don't talk about it. Didn't happen. Everyone has amnesia. We just move on.
You know, the interesting thing is that is a lot of how Japan treats what happened between 1937 and 1946.
I think that they didn't start teaching students that there was a war between the US and Japan until like the 80s, and it wasn't until like the 90s that they taught that we were on opposite sides of that war.
Well, what I have heard, obviously I've never been through the Japanese education system, but I've heard, yeah, really. I've heard that they don't teach any like remotely current era history in high school.
Yeah, that's probably a good call.
If you want to hear anything that happened after 1900, you got to go to college.
Yeah, it's like how we came to this country and there was no one here, and then we had indentured servitude, and then something civil war, and then racism was ended forever. That's America, you know? That's exactly how it happened. Don't look into it any further, please.
Yeah, it's a tough time to defend America, though I will say I think we do a little bit better at reckoning with our problematic history
to defend America, but Japan,
yeah, that's imperial. So no, in all honesty, that was one of the reasons I wanted to read this book. So last time we covered the Hunjin Murders, you didn't know what it was. You thought it was going to be a horror book.
Yeah, as you often do.
It is a murder mystery book featuring a celebrity detective, Kosuke Kindaichi.
We've established he is a celebrity because his methods involve deductive reasoning rather than torture and beating. And that's why he is Japan's #1 detective despite only solving one crime.
Well, he solved other crimes in the Hunjin Murders, if you remember.
I thought those were in America that he solved.
No, he also had he had a bit of a reputation in Tokyo.
Ah.
So he had solved some crimes.
What is left of Tokyo in 1946?
Not a lot. He went there and his apartment was burned to the ground, so
yeah,
he decided to travel for a bit.
Probably a good call. Yeah.
So let's talk about a couple of things. Just get out of the way. A little bit of Japanese current events and a little bit of Japanese history. So for those of you who don't know, I guess, Japan was on the wrong side of World War II. picked a fight they couldn't win, and they lost, and it was terrible. There was 2 atomic bombings, the only 2 atomic bombs ever dropped in war.
And if you ask people in China, we didn't bomb them hard enough.
There's I remember an old Chinese woman being pretty
Yeah,
harsh about that.
yeah,
So there's a lot of complicated history, and then Japan and America were just the best of friends ever since.
that's how that
And
works.
yeah, that's how that works. It worked with half of Korea and Japan, and then never again.
And
But
don't observe Korea in any sort of don't put them under a magnifying glass to.
well, funny you should mention that,
Uh
because
oh.
don't put Japan under a microphone.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
don't.
Just go there, do the touristy stuff, and then say, "Wow, what a great time that was." And you go home and you don't engage with the other part.
And I would encourage you not to commit a crime while you're there, because if you do,
There isn't going to be a Kosuke Kindaichi to come and.
yeah. So
What'd you say? A 99.9?
they literally have a 99.8%, I
Ooh, we
think.
gotta get those numbers up.
Yeah.
Conviction rates are too low.
A 99.8% conviction rate. There are numerous practices that the police and the prosecution use to extract bullshit confessions from people. Almost no one gets out on bail. If you do get out on bail, they'll rearrest you for a different crime.
The conviction rate in the USSR was 99.6.
Yeah. It's pretty brutal.
Oh
And
my god.
Japanese prison is also not great. Now they won't let just anybody in to monitor it. You're allowed to go to certain prisons. The UN has been allowed to go to certain prisons. They have been allowed to see certain inmates. They're usually the best behaved inmates. They're usually basically facilities that they want you to see. So they're sweeping a lot under the rug. And
Yeah.
as an American, I know I'm saying that I'm sitting in a glass house throwing stones right now. But I do think Japan's criminal justice system is, if I had to pick, I'd pick the American one if I had to defend myself. So that's a bit of a problem. That's an interesting way they view crime. And then the other thing you need to know is like what we were saying about Japan's reckoning with its behavior in World War II. You kind of have another example of how you could deal with this in Germany, where they require education about it. They have
It's
really
illegal to do the salute
it's
or
illegal
the
to do that
symbols or
that gesture Elon Musk did. That definitely wasn't the gesture you think it was, but if you did it in Germany, you would be arrested. And yeah, so Germany does a pretty good job of reckoning with its crimes during World War II. Japan, not so much. A
a lot of them got away with it.
lot of them continued on in government. A lot of
Yeah.
them just rolled right into the next government because uh, America really needed a ally in.
We really wanted someone to help police that area, and then they got rid of their military. And we're like, well,
They
I
gave us
guess we'll put
basically,
our military
well,
there.
yeah, I guess we made them get rid of their military, and then
From what I understand, that wasn't the thought behind the Truman administration. They wanted Japan to rearm against the Soviets and communist China, and then Japan put in their constitution that they're abolishing war forever or something like that. That
well, they're working on
threw
that.
a wrench.
They're working on that now. They would really like to point some guns at China. So again, so yeah, Japan doesn't like to talk about what it did in World War II. It's not very, doesn't have a great track record of dealing with it. It committed pretty horrendous war crimes in China, Korea, and basically everywhere they went. And they don't talk about it. They don't talk about World War II. You don't see a lot about World War II in Japanese media. I've been on a separate anime podcast. I know a pretty decent amount about anime, manga, Japanese pop culture, TV, and stuff. And if they talk about World War II, they tend to talk about the
The
Nazis.
victim. Oh, I thought you were going to say the atom bomb, because they do take a victim stance of
They do.
We
They do.
got bombed by. We got the atomic bomb.
And to be fair, the atomic bomb was pretty intense.
let's quote that. The
Yeah, I
atomic
know.
bomb was
It's
pretty
a
intense.
hot take, I know.
Detective Bensky.
Yeah, but I'm not going to say there's not uh, it's a complicated mess that they don't want to ever reckon with. And so that brings me to why Death on Gokumon Island is interesting, because the only time you're ever going to see the war talked about in Japanese media, from what I have seen, with very few exceptions, is stuff that was written at the time. Like the original Godzilla actually deals with some stuff from World War II. Death on Gokumon Island actually deals with the repatriating soldiers coming back from World War II. And so it's an interesting historical artifact, if nothing else. As a murder mystery, I'd say it's okay.
I liked it better than Honjin Murders.
Yeah, but the dude's no Agatha Christie. He's
No, I think the weakest part of this is the characters are all kind of they feel the same.
yeah, yeah. It's a little. They say this, like Seishi Yokomizo is kind of touted as like the Agatha Christie of Japan, or the Arthur Conan
Much in the
Doyle of
same
Japan.
way, Kosuke is the greatest
Yeah,
detective in Japan. Yeah.
I don't know if that's true. I'm sure we could find a better Japanese detective story, but he was writing this kind of murder mystery at a time when not many other people were tackling it. And so I think Death on Gokumon Island is a very interesting piece of Japanese media. It covers a very interesting time and gives you just a little bit of a window into what the average Japanese person was thinking. Because the other thing we didn't really mention is that the Japanese government was 100% lying to the Japanese people about what was going on in the war. They didn't talk about a lot of the war crimes. They really thought their boys were over in China spreading Asian
I
unity.
mean, they did talk about all the people they beheaded in the newspaper in China.
They
That
did. They didn't talk about the sex crimes.
yeah, they did avoid that. It's probably a good call on their part if they wanted to keep people on their side. They also, as long as we have the battleship Yamato, we can win this war.
That's the other thing I was going to say is they perhaps the biggest surprise to the Japanese people was that they were in fact losing.
Yeah.
They really thought they had that one.
They had the Yamato. It was the biggest battleship ever. It would have really wrecked our shit if it were like 40 years earlier when
Made a very
battleships
very
mattered.
popular show, the space battleship Yamato. Speaking of Japanese pop culture.
Yeah, if we just didn't have wave after wave of carriers and planes,
Oh my god. I know the industrial capacity of the United
we're
States in
gonna
World War
we're
II.
gonna talk about more later this year, and you'll have no one to blame but yourself, Ben.
I know. Save it. But yeah, that is actually an interesting example though. Like Space Battleship Yamato, that would be like Germany coming out with like a Luftwaffe, like pro Red Baron cartoon. Uh but yeah, it's a giant mess. So let's talk
Yeah,
about the
and so
book.
was the Yamato. It was a giant mess. Most of the time, it was in port, having to be repaired because it got a boo boo, and then it got hit by just like I think it was like 3 hours of just getting hit with bombs.
Well, you never saw that thing turn into a giant robot and punch Truman in the face.
We have the Statue of Liberty cannon, sir.
Oh, G Gundam.
Oh.
You racist, drug fueled nightmare. uh,
I think the thing that annoyed me the most was the guy who was representing America. I was like, that doesn't look like any American I've ever seen in my
you know,
life.
I think the thing that annoyed everyone the most was their country's guy.
Yes. probably true.
We got to talk about the actual book.
All right. So, Gokumon Island, there's a little introduction. It's a place that used to be like a pirate stronghold, and then it became a place where it became their Australia. You know, that's where they dumped all their convicts and stuff they didn't want anymore.
Yeah, it's in the Sato Inland Sea. It's a tiny island just a few miles across. Has a small village. It's too rocky and uneven for any kind of serious farming. So the main industry of the people there is fishing.
Yeah,
And I believe the Sato Inland Sea faces China.
that sounds right.
And so they installed a lot of anti-aircraft cannon there, and they had troops stationed on the island because it was a buffer to the mainland.
There were a
So
lot of buffers to the mainland, and they just slowly disappeared.
it's kind of important to understand the history of Gokumon Island because this is as close as Japan gets to like the I don't know, the hills of West Virginia. The people that live here have lived here for thousands of years.
They're a little
Everybody's everybody's
strange.
kind of related, and everybody's very set in their ways. They're not like the mainland Japanese. They don't have the same manners. They have slightly different customs, and it's not friendly to strangers. You're definitely everybody's going to know you're not from there.
They're secretly fish people, and we're gonna get a
There is a
shrine to
bit of a
Dagon.
Lovecraftian vibe there in this town. Also important to know, huge bougie poetry nerds. You might struggle to juggle those two concepts in your
Oh God, is that ever the case?
there's a lot of haiku that does not translate particularly well. And it doesn't all the poetry is kind of lost in translation, and it just sounds like a series of slightly not random words. But they tried. The translation of this book hews very literal because I think we talked about this a little bit off mic, but I think they're trying to give you as close to his words as you can because each thing is a clue and it might matter, but it does come off sounding a little strange in places for that
Yeah,
reason.
yeah. There's some weird repetition where the narrator will tell you, like, out of context or character, like, here's what this person's doing, and then that guy will tell Kensuke, like, or Kosuke, like, hey, here's what I've been doing. It's just a repeat of what the narrator said.
So Kosuke,
Yeah, he was drafted to China, and I went, oh, but then thankfully he went to New Guinea, where he spent the rest of the war on an island that nobody particularly cared about after the initial fighting, and the U.S. just kind of went around them, and the Japanese government was like, well, we got to keep you there so that no one gets on this island. But also, we have no way of giving you food. We probably wouldn't give it to you, like, even if we did. So good luck. So they're out there on this shitty island that no one wants in the middle of the ocean with they have to like forage for whatever they can find. They're dying of malaria, and you're literally in a pointless position that doesn't even help your side of the war. And then your side loses, but you're like just relieved that you're going to get to finally go home. And can you imagine then how incredibly shitty it would be to finally survive all of that, to die on the way home on the boat? You're on the boat going home and you die. Can you imagine how fucking awful that would be?
yeah, and it's extra worse for a couple of reasons. But so Kosuke did not die on the way home. You might be thinking that based on the story, but no. Kosuke, he was the best detective in Japan, but they kind of needed every able-bodied man and then like maybe a few million more. So Kosuke gets called up, gets on New Guinea, and while he's there, he runs into another dude he sort of bonds with named Chimata. And Chimata is like really brave, really strong, but he's really afraid of dying. And like more afraid of dying than one would typically be, which I don't super know what that means.
Do you want me to tell you?
How do you distinguish his fear of dying from all the other people's fear of dying?
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Right?
I feel like I feel like he probably constantly talked about like, boy, I sure am glad to still be alive today. It would be really bad if suddenly I were dead. And then I do remember when they're like, "All right, we lost the war. It's time to go home." He was like, "Yeah, I get to live. I'm gonna live and definitely not die on the ship home. Fuck yeah,
But again,
Chimata forever."
I gotta wonder how you distinguished that from all the other people who were
Chimata
like,
wanted it more.
yeah, I guess Chimata just wanted it more, and that's why he didn't get it.
Yeah.
Because that's not honorable for a Japanese soldier to want to live. They told them it was bad luck to want to live, and he didn't listen, and it was bad luck. So he died of all that malaria on the ship home. And on the ship, so Kosuke has clocked that this guy's fear of dying. It's like we're all afraid of dying, and we've been abandoned by the government, and then we lost the war, and I don't even know if anybody knows we're still here. And oh, I guess they do. They're sending a boat. Hey, they're sending a boat. That's nice. You're way
Yeah.
too excited about this boat. Why are you so excited, man? Like, okay, act like you've been there before. Like, come on.
Yeah.
And he dies, but before he dies, he's like, Kosuke, I know that you are actually a famous detective from Tokyo, and and I've always known, and I didn't tell you, I didn't talk about it because it just, it was never the right time. And I know you're probably thinking like we had a lot of time sitting in the jungle starving to death, but I don't know. It just I was thinking about how much I wanted to live, and I forgot all about it.
It wouldn't be dramatic if I told you what was going to happen, so I'm going to try to tell you right now in my dying breath. Please, Kosuke, my sisters, they're gonna die. My cousin.
You gotta take this letter I wrote that explains nothing
Yeah.
ahead of time.
I guess he's like, well, you're a famous detective. You'll figure it out. And it's like you could just tell him. Here's his letter. Kosuke, I
Yeah.
need you to go stop my sisters from being murdered. It would be really helpful if you knew what you were getting into, so you wouldn't have to figure it out as they were getting murdered. That would be really unfortunate if you were too tied up in the case to save anyone. Like, Kosuke wasn't really famous for saving anyone. He was famous for solving the murders after the fact. And during the case of his investigation, the younger idiot brother tried to stab himself with a rusty sword and got lockjaw. So I'm just saying, like, Kosuke's strengths are not in preventing the loss of life.
I don't prevent crime, I solve crime.
Exactly.
If I prevented it, I wouldn't have puzzles to solve, and that would be boring. I'm not here to like fix poverty. I'm not here to make people less desperate. I'm here to figure out the interesting ways they kill each other when they are. And so Kosuke is like, I'm going to do this for Chimata, though. I'm a changed man. I'm coming back from the war a bit changed. And the weird thing is, he does. And I don't know if this is just Yokomizo revisiting the character after some time, and he's changed the character slightly. But in the Honjin murders, he's kind of quirky.
Yeah, he is far less quirky in this. I was actually taken a little aback when he started scratching his head again and stammering, and I was like, "Oh, that's kind of like what I remember." He's not
Yeah.
he's not wearing like socks with sandals though, with his jeans tucked into his sandals and
Okay.
wearing
Well, he
something out of date from another
he
country
he
or
he
anything.
always wears a hakama skirt. So, and socks with sandals is normal in Japan.
Well, then this would be no socks with sandals.
Disgusting. You're going to get foot sweat on your sandals.
Gross.
So yeah, Kosuke he still wears Japanese style clothing, um, and he still looks the same. He's still got the messy hair, but no, he's definitely come back from the war a bit changed. Like he's definitely not having a lot of fun anymore. He definitely does seem like a guy who's a little bit tortured. And the other interesting thing that the book mentions that I didn't really think about is it's all to do with this repatriation effort. So all these Japanese soldiers are all around the world and or all around the Pacific, I guess, and they need to bring them all back because they're not allowed to keep the territory. And so they're bringing all these guys back, and these guys are coming home, and they're announcing on the radio like which ships are coming, but like there's really no reliable mail. Like you're not going to get a letter there faster than you could get there. And sometimes when you get there, like for example, if you had an apartment in Tokyo, you find that the entire city has been firebombed and it basically doesn't exist anymore. And if you go to some other major cities, you find that they don't exist anymore. And you like most everywhere had been firebombed. I mean, except Kyoto because the one guy liked it.
Yeah.
So what do? You go there. They couldn't leave a forwarding address. You don't have a cell phone. If they had a phone, their landline burned. So people are struggling to find each other, and a lot of times the only news you're going to get of whether or not your relative survived is if somebody who knew him happens to run into you and it's like, oh yeah, he's coming back on this ship. And then conversely, the only way you're going to find out they're not coming back on that ship is if some guy shows up and tells you. And so that duty has fallen to Kosuke to tell Chimata's family that Chimata is not coming back, and he has that letter he has to deliver.
Yeah.
And he gets on a ferry between all these redneck fishing islands. And each island is just a little bit creepier and more insular than the first.
A little more redneck than the last.
Yeah. And eventually it's just him and two other dudes going to the last island.
Yeah, you pass one, there's Ron White. You pass one, Jeff Foxworthy. Now we're coming up on Larry the Cable Guy, and
I don't
I think this might be.
I don't know if I want to stay here.
I think this might be the island, guys.
Like I feel like I could have dinner with that Ron White one, but I don't know about this guy.
So I have to mention that I started listening to the audiobook and I just could not. And so I switched to the regular book about 2 chapters in. So it's a little hazy at the beginning. The Tide Master, right?
Yeah.
I feel like it starts with a T, doesn't it?
I think it was like
Takezo.
Yeah. So Takezo is the Tide Master, and he's like, "Hey, did you hear?" He turns to this Buddhist priest named Ryonen, and he says, "Hey, Ryonen, did you hear that Hitoshi's coming back?"
Ryonen, not to be confused with his apprentice Ryotaku.
Yes.
Again, it's like Jim and John. Like my replacement here is John. It's like, could you not please? Maybe it makes more sense in Japanese, but I had to keep reminding myself. Okay, Ryonen is the old guy.
There's a practice in Zen Buddhism of taking a Dharma name when you take your precepts.
I believe it is pronounced Zensuni, Ben.
So I don't know if these are Dharma names, which might explain why they're similar. I'm guessing they're Ryo. The kanji for Ryo is the same for both of them. It's probably a thing. I think that might actually be a cultural thing. But so Takezo and Ryonen are talking, and Kosuke realizes that this Ryonen guy is one of the people he's supposed to give this letter to.
Did he read the letter?
I don't know if he did read the letter.
I feel like that could have clarified some things right away.
Yeah, Kosuke is not big on telling people what he's doing anymore or figuring out what he's doing anymore. So he's like, Ryonen, I gotta tell you, I'm actually I was stationed with Chimata, and I'm sorry to tell you he's not coming back. And here is a letter. And Ryonen's like, oh boy.
And somewhere you just hear.
Now Ryonen, he's on this boat because during the war effort, Japan was scrambling to get all the metal it could find, but don't worry, we're doing fine. There's not a supply shortage.
We just need to take your temple bell.
Yeah.
No big deal. We've got plenty of metal, but like we don't want the Americans to figure that out, you know? So
Yeah, we're just throwing lots of planes and lots of pilots at the Americans, and they just keep building those boats, man. So
when
in
the
America, I don't even think they have temple bells, so they're going to be running out pretty soon.
yeah.
So,
when the Americans invade the home island, you know, because we're winning. That's what we wanted. We'll need this bell to fend them off.
do you think we should have secured more of China first? Like, do you think we should have gotten like most of China mining before we picked a big fight we couldn't win?
You know, instead of picking a big fight that we couldn't win, how about we pick two and we also go into Burma?
It's almost like the Japanese military did not talk to each other, and they each just started doing shit. And then the emperor was like, "Guys, if we don't surrender." So yeah, so Ryonen is there to get his temple bell back. So it was requisitioned by the war effort, but in a stroke of good fortune, the war ended. And that's the other thing. They do say we lose a lot in this book, but they don't mention a lot about like how. They do mention that it was a surprise
Yeah.
to the Islanders.
Yeah, we were doing so well, but and then the Soviet nation attacked.
So Rionen's getting this bell back, and he hears this news, and he's like, "Oh well, I'd better dump some lore on you before you go into this island, because you're going to want to know this before you get in there. There's some island politics you're going to need to know."
Get her done is said a lot, okay?
They do talk about how his Tokyo dialect is so exotic to them. So there's the Quito family.
Can you just fucking imagine someone in the South talking about that about like a New York accent?
I don't know. I have been in the South, and I have had people say I talk fancy.
Oh my god.
I don't know if that was the words I use or the way I used or the way I said them, but yeah, I've had it happen. So some things you gotta know. There's the Keto family, not like the diet, like Kito. And the Keto family, they have a main family and a branch family. And the main family controls all the fishing. Now, this is pretty lucrative business. This island has made a lot of good money off the fat of the sea. Okay. And the head Quito family, that's where Chimata was from. He was their heir. And his grandfather died. When he heard we lost the war, he just died of multiple strokes. He was probably not doing great before we lost the war.
He had a stroke, but he was still hanging on right up until the emperor surrendered, and he did not go kindly.
He didn't want
Kaimon?
Kaimon. Yeah. It's Kaemon.
Yeah, his original heir, who was the father of your boy, we call him the lunatic.
Yeah, and we call him the lunatic because he's I don't know what he's got. He's he's you're a doctor. What would
It
you
sounds like psychosis, but
Yosamatsu.
yeah, Yosamatsu. It sounds like he had it happened like late though. This wasn't like schizophrenia. It was like a psychotic break from reality or something.
Yeah, he howls at the moon and has violent outbursts and doesn't seem capable of speech anymore.
Yeah.
And I'm going to tell you right now, I clocked that as a red herring right
Yeah,
off the
I
bat.
knew it wasn't going to be him. Or if it was, he was going to be pretending to be crazy.
I
But
did entertain the idea that he was pretending to be crazy, but as time went on, when they mentioned he was like doughy, I was like, well, you'd have to be pretty physically fit to pull off some of the stuff this guy would have had to pull off. So I don't think so. There's a lot of red herrings in this book. That's one of the ways he really gets you.
there's like 80% of the book is dispelling a bunch of red herrings before you can actually start solving.
This is like one of those word problems in math where they force you to find the relevant information.
I think I figured out who it was at about 85% of the way through the book.
I don't think I figured out who it was. I fell into the Hitoshi trap. It seemed too obvious, but I was like, I don't know what else it could be. I did suspect one of the people who actually wound up
Yeah, I
doing it.
guess it was
Spoilers.
spoilers. There's more
Yeah.
than one killer, and
Yeah.
I suspected two of them. Totally did not suspect that third guy.
Yeah, so we'll jump into that. So, here's the politics of the island. And you and I were both confused about this, and I think we're still confused about this.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. So, Kaimon is in charge of the fishing. He's rich, he's got money. Whoever's in charge of the fishing has a money motive for this crime. Chimata would have been the inheritor of that fortune,
His
but he
grandson.
but he
Yeah.
died. So, now the fortune will go to Chimata's half
Cousin.
sisters.
Oh wait, no, you're right. No, sorry, it does go to the half
Yeah,
sisters
it
first.
does go to the half sisters. And
So
so that gives
there,
Hitoshi, who is coming back, a potential
profit motive.
motive. The
Yeah.
sisters are the ones that are going to die. I'm going to spoil that right now.
The book spoils it. The book straight up tells you in the first chapter, all three of these girls are gonna get got. They're all gonna die.
Kosuke's here to save them. He doesn't do that.
He fails spectacularly. Day after day, night after night, there's a new murder carried out.
Kosuke watches these girls die one after another. He tries to save them, but he just keeps getting foiled by accidentally trusting the killers. So, okay. So the three sisters, let me give you their names. I'm throwing a lot of names at you if you're not familiar with Japanese names.
Tsukiyo,
Tsukio,
Yuki, and
Yukie,
Hanako.
Tsukio, Yukie, Hanako. And
Yeah, I guess that
there's
makes sense. That's how Hiei is. I get all my Japanese culture.
Japanese vowels are weird.
Unlike our respectable English vowels. Or should we start calling it American vowels? Why haven't we renamed the language yet, Trump?
Well, no, didn't they Brexit? They did stupid shit too. They're on our side.
They might be the 52nd state right after we annex all of Canada.
I'm sorry, Canada. I know we got a lot of Canadian listeners. Or if you got to boycott the podcast, I understand.
I'm willing to put a Canadian flag up on the podcast so we can pretend to be from Canada.
If those are your demand, yeah. You know what, Canada? I know we've joked a lot on this podcast about your love of Tim Hortons and maple syrup, but could we pretend to be you?
Yeah.
Maybe think about it. It's an offer. It's on the table. We already do when we travel internationally.
Yeah, yeah, we do. Maybe we could be perhaps your 11th province.
So, Tsukio, Yukie, Hanako. They are Chimata's half siblings. Ah, see, this is why. This is where we got stuck.
And then Sane and
Sanae.
Sane and Hitoshi
Sanae.
are his cousins, from who I do not know.
Yes. Not the Branch family, I guess.
No, even though I assumed the Branch family was like a cousin.
I assume the Branch family was Kaimon's brother.
Yeah, I
But
assumed.
maybe that's not the. Well, it could be Kaimon's brother.
How do you say it?
Gihei.
Gihei? Okay. Gihei. I assume that was Kaimon's like brother, or maybe it was his
No, so
cousin.
you know what? You know what? We're missing a generation. So Kaimon, right? His brother could be Gihei, and then that would make Gihei Chimata's great uncle. For Chimata's uncle would be Yosamatsu's sibling, the crazy guy. The crazy guy must have a sibling.
Yeah, I assume so.
So then that
Sane
sibling
and Hitoshi.
had Sanae and Hitoshi.
I will never be able to pronounce her name.
Why?
Sonic the Hedgehog.
Sanae.
Sonic the Hedgehog. So, okay, and it's, it's not strange at all that they're trying to hook up the handsome young man Ukai from the Branch
Ukai.
family with one of the girls from the main family.
The weird thing is he's not really part of the Branch family though.
Is he not?
I mean, he's like in their allegiance, but he's not of their family.
Is he not?
No, because they kick him off the island at the end. They just tell him to get out, go back where he came from. I don't know.
I was confused about what had happened with him at the end.
So there's a complicated family relation. I'll try to explain it as it's relevant. The
Get
Branch
her
family.
done. Get her done. Get her gun. Get her done.
The Branch family is a red herring, and they're also, ironically, the most normal people on the island.
Yes, in fact, Gihai is like
Gihei.
no,
Gihei.
no. Gihei.
Gihei is fine. You can say that.
Okay, Gihei is very much responsible for me understanding who did all the killings, and Kosuke gets like a breakthrough after talking to him.
Yeah, he does kind of tell Kosuke everything that makes it make sense, and Kosuke's like, oh my god, they're a bunch of bougie fucking nerds.
They sit around doing slam haiku poetry.
Okay, so we got 3 victims. Now, so the half siblings would inherit the fishing empire. So in order for Hitoshi to inherit it, they would have to die. Hitoshi's coming back from the war, and all of a sudden somebody starts murdering these half siblings.
You couldn't just write them out of your will or disinherit them. You had to have them die.
I don't know. They might. So there's another interesting thing about Japan, and and I think Korea has this too, and maybe even China. They go not by, so like we have social security numbers, right? And our affairs are managed at the individual level.
Yeah.
In Japan and Korea, they have a family registry.
Disgusting.
And you're registered at a household level.
Disgusting. I'm an individual.
Well, there's a lot of reasons you want this, and one of them is because the family registry is public, and it creates a ton of complications for divorce. There was for a long time, Japan had the highest rate of elderly divorce in the world. Like people getting divorced like in their 70s and 80s. And it's because they wanted to be divorced the whole time, may have even been living separately the whole time, but they stayed together until their children's careers were established, because companies would look up in the family registry if you were the child of a broken home, and they would consider you mentally compromised in that case, and they would not
Japan, you
hire
don't
you.
have just a wealth of people, you know? Your birth rates are on the decline. You're
But
not
so's our
in.
economy.
That's fair. That's
So
fair.
keeping it
Eventually, it will
competitive.
all level out.
Eventually, we'll all be in poverty.
Free market capitalism. Eventually, the market solves itself because there is no market, because we're all broke. Checkmate, libs.
It's just rich people selling AI generated content to each other. That's the future they want. I don't really know why, but that's what's happening. So,
And then one of them will get on there and be like, I'm a top 10 Diablo 17 player. Please love me. Please believe me.
please, please love me is kind of Elon Musk's whole brand. It'd be sad if he didn't have so much power. Now, okay, so the three girls are the worst.
What?
They are strange people.
They're just girls.
No, they're strange. I mean, okay,
Wow.
Yokomizo is kind of a misogynist, but
What?
they're strange even by his standards for women. When Kosuke goes to the house and tells them like, "Hey, your brother's dead. I'm sorry." They're like, "Lol, what? Oh my god, that's so crazy."
They really do act like some Gen Z troll. Yeah. That's fair. That's a fair comparison.
Meanwhile, Sanae, the cousin, is
Who I didn't realize Kosuke had a thing for until she turned him down at the very end of the book.
I kind of got that. I think
Kosuke doesn't seem the type to get with anyone.
I think the fact that he wasn't,
That
his
upset.
internal monologue, blatantly disgusted with her, is to indicate he has some affection for her. So, yeah, the half sisters are like, they behave like children. He describes them as having like the minds of children, even though they're in their
Yeah,
20s.
that is fair.
Whereas
Sane, you
Sane's,
wanna come with me back to my apart? Ooh,
well, the good news is real estate's cheap right now
that
in,
is
in
true.
Tokyo.
I assume it's probably it's like the Oklahoma the land grab.
just plant a claim
plant a
at this
flag
point,
and it's
yeah.
yours as long as you build a house on it within the next 10 years or whatever.
So Sanae has been kind of managing the fishing village, the family's affairs, and also living there is Okatsu, who is also a character. She is Kaimon's former mistress. She's the Ivanka. Which one's the wife?
I don't know or care.
Uh, no, wait. I'm thinking of his previous wife.
Ivanka is his daughter, isn't
That's his
it?
daughter, and then Ivana was his former wife. Who's the current wife?
I
The hat lady?
I have no idea.
Melania.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She wrote a book, Ben.
You
And
know, I saw a meme the other day, and it's like, without immigrants, who's going to do the hard jobs Americans don't want to do, like be Donald Trump's wife?
well, it's not specific immigrants. I was talking about with my parents, and we were talking about like, there are towns here in my state that are wholly propped up by illegal immigrants working in meatpacking facilities or farming. And if you deported all of them, I'm pretty sure my state's economy, or at the very least, all those small towns that likely voted overwhelmingly for Trump, would collapse. But sure, I'm calling ICE. They have
Yeah,
a hotline?
they do, actually. I don't know. I think they had to close it because people kept reporting Elon Musk. I think that's actually true.
Is he a citizen? I want to see a birth certificate.
So yeah, that's what we're dealing with here. Okatsu is not relevant. Sanae is not super relevant. Branch family is not super relevant. So there's three old men that are sort of running the town. They're not running the fishing, but they're managing
There's
the
a
affairs.
lot of articles in the last few hours asking if he is actually a U.S. citizen.
It doesn't matter, dude. None of
I
it
know.
matters.
I know. Anyway,
So Ryonen, the head priest of the Senkoji temple, is one of the old men who runs the town. And then we have Makihei Araki, the village mayor, who
why do
probably
you need a mayor?
should be running the town.
Why do you
And
need a
then
mayor when you just got rich families and the church?
that's a question America's going to answer soon. And then we have Koan
Why do we need Trump if
Murase.
we've got Elon? He's gonna save us with those electric cars that keep lighting on fire.
Now he's going to save us by cutting funding to NPR or something.
We need to go to Mars in our Cybertruck.
And you see, I don't want to talk about Elon Musk.
Does anyone really want to talk about Elon Musk? I don't even think he wants to talk about Elon Musk because he just thinks about how sad Elon Musk is that no one loves him. Anyway, so we got so Kosuke is put up in the temple in a drafty room while he hangs out on the island.
Yeah, and he's given something to keep the draft out.
It's a screen
It's a
with
screen.
haikus on it.
Yeah, it's papered with haiku. Poorly written haiku. And I don't mean that the haiku is necessarily bad. I mean the handwriting is terrible. Like it's like the handwriting of somebody who suffered a series of recent strokes.
My grandfather, yeah, he was in the war.
Yeah.
Who could it be, Ben?
I I don't know. It could be a fan.
I thought, what? Who cares? Why are you telling me about these haikus?
I thought I don't what could a haiku have to do with murder? No, I will say this probably you probably would get a lot more out of this if you're familiar with the great Japanese poets.
If you're familiar with the great Japanese poets and also that World War II happened,
I have heard of Basho.
I have also heard of that, and I don't know why.
I think that may be the only Japanese like classical poet I'm familiar with. And then he references a lot of other classical Japanese poets.
A lot of whom seem to be like copies of Basho or not as good or his apprentice or something. And how hard could it be to haiku when you just got nothing but time in between your war conquests?
It's
You
at
know?
575. That's all you got to do.
Yeah. Oh,
But,
happy birthday, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm older than I was. But yeah, so it's papered with haiku, and the haiku are all relevant to the crime. Did you happen to write down the haikus?
One of them was about the seasons. One of them was about a cricket under the hat. I don't remember the third one. It had something to do with like a blossom or a bush or something.
Oh, I do. Okay. Um. Yeah. How tragic beneath the helmet, a hidden cricket. Okay, this is gonna be bad because I don't super remember the haikus.
Yeah. Well, do you want to get to the first killing?
Yeah, I'll let you go
So
because you're quicker.
so yeah, we have the wake for Chimata, and then after that we're like, hey, has anyone seen Hanako? She hasn't been around here in a while. And someone's like, "Oh, I saw that the lover boy from the Branch family heading up to the temple this evening, writing letters to her. That guy is no good because he wants to get with a woman."
Well, I think he plays all of them, right? Like he pretends to get with each of them.
Yeah, obviously that's what he'd do.
Well, that is wrong.
Not unless all of them consent. And then it's just weird.
True. Say it. Say your catchphrase. Say the thing, Nate. Say the thing.
I have a catchphrase.
Oh my God, yes. What do you normally shout in these situations?
It was a pre-Korean War world.
No. There's a thing you always shout whenever two or more adults are involved in an intimate relationship as a group.
A polycule?
There you go.
Polycule, Ben. I was thinking, like, how is Ralph Nader involved?
How is Ralph Nader involved in the Gokumon murders?
So, all right, she's not around the house, but double check. The rest of us, and by the rest of us, I mean the priest, the Tide Master, Kosuke, and the junior priest. We're all going to go to the temple, see if we can find her. And
good news, we found her.
Good news, we found her. She is upside down, draped from a tree.
She's hanging upside down in a plum tree.
Super dead.
With her obi belt. She's hanging from her own obi belt, which has been tied around her legs and then tied around the tree. Which is reminiscent of a haiku, kind of. Something about something being the wrong way around in a tree. Sign of spring.
I do remember. So before this, the priest was like, all right, we're going to look for her. You go to the Branch family, tell them about the wake or whatever, Kosuke. And then he directed where everyone was going to go. And then they get in here and he says, like, out of reason, but it can't be helped. And Kosuke's like, the fuck does he mean out of reason? Why would he say that? What does it mean? Is he talking about the crazy guy who is out of reason because he's crazy? And the priest also looks a little weird. Like he looks somewhere in the temple, he freezes for a moment, and he's like, he directs everyone to like, hey, you go here, you check here, you check here. Yeah, break. We'll find out what has happened. So Kosuke will later realize like the priest saw someone. The killer must have been in the temple, and for whatever reason, the priest helped him escape. And they find a bunch of boot prints with a strange bat symbol. It was Batman, by the way.
I was thinking that the entire time.
Batman had a strange symbol on his boot, and Kosuke's like, these are military boots. Hitoshi might be on the island. I don't know.
Could be Hitoshi. Could be any number of the repatriated men who have taken up piracy. It's a weird, lawless country out here. It's kind of terrible in the Seto Inland Sea. I'm going back to Tokyo as soon as this is done. But first, I've got to save the remaining girls.
I've got this.
Here's Editor Ben. I think we rambled on just a little too long on this book. And I think I'm going to need to split this into two parts. Listening back, I think this is the best place to do the divide, even though it seems kind of abrupt. Here we have the setup explained. The first murder has taken place. And then the second half will follow the investigation. We'll get into who did it, how did they do it, and, of course, the rubric. I do kind of apologize, too, for some of the diversions into the political stuff that didn't really need to be there. And it did add some length to the episode, but I don't know. I always try to walk a fine line with words about books between letting people know where I stand on an issue and not trying to like hammer it into the ground, because I know right now wherever you look, you're just bombarded with what's going on in America, and therefore, you know, how the rest of the world has to react to it. And it's a giant mess, and I certainly didn't mean to bring anybody down if they were looking for something to bring them back up. Though it is called Death on Gokumon Island, so you should have known it was going to be at least a little depressing. Now, that brings us to our escape plan. Now, in order to get out of this and flee to international waters where we can podcast in true freedom, we're going to need some sort of boat. And I hear a yacht is a great way to travel, and that is why I need to thank our Yacht Plan tier patrons who are supporting our Great Escape and the ability of this podcast to continue to remind Elon Musk that his father will never love him. So, the people allowing us to do that are Isekai Sensei-sama of the That Time I Got Reincarnated in the Same World as an Anime Podcaster podcast. That is about Japanese stuff sometimes. This is Japanese stuff. You should fit right in. You should read this book. We have Jamie, the Gravy Man of the If You Want the Gravy blog. I think there has been at least one movie made of Seishi Yokomizo's work. So you should check that out and let me know if it's any good. I don't know if it's in English. Then we have Spooky Shy with a Y, over on TikTok. TikTok, it could not be banned. They tried, they failed, they came at it and they missed. And we have John Bierce, actual author of The City That Would Eat the World, coming extremely soon as part of a new series called More Gods Than Stars. You should check it out. We will be covering it on the podcast after it comes out. So if you want to read along, you should do that. And last but not least, we have Keegan, who has given me no project to shout out. So I will simply say hello. And with that, I will leave you on a perhaps literal cliffhanger. I think I forget how this island is laid out, but it's pretty steep. So I'm going to leave you there, and I'm going to trust that you're going to remember all the names. I'm just kidding. I'll do a refresher for the next part. But yeah, try to keep it in your noodle, and then next week we'll figure out who did it.